Hierarchy of needs. Today, we're talking about one of my favorite frameworks because it's mostly influenced by movement itself. And again, this is built through movement, but it does one thing really well. It removes guesswork, right? I've talked about how we assess, we don't guess here. If you've been in pain, stuck in a plateau, or you've tried all of the fixes that didn't work, the biggest thing that you're missing is usually not effort. Again, we don't need more information, we need more certainty. So, the hierarchy of needs will help you by taking the confusion out of the equation, and it will give us together a structure to follow. The truth is this: a lot of people are out here just throwing things at the wall and hoping something will stick. I've been victim to that, and I'm sure you have too. We're not going to do that here. We're going to assess everything. We're not going to guess. That's going to be the motto and the theme. This hierarchy, the hierarchy of needs, is going to help us create plans that are specific to you. This is going to be based on what's actually showing up, not random internet advice, ChatGPT, or generic programs. When we follow it, we solve problems that have been hanging around for weeks, months, probably years, and for some of you, even decades. Let's walk through it. It's going to look like a pyramid structure, okay? And I want you to, we're going to come back to this in another lesson. Breath work is going to be the hidden foundation underneath all of it. But in theory, we're going to start at recovery and capacity balance as the baseline. So as we move up, it's going to be a little bit more dialed. But if we are to think about a pyramid visually, I want you to think about the pyramid with recovery and capacity at the bottom. And then I want you to think below that a dotted line that says breath work. Breath work is going to be the thing that supports every single bucket as we move up, okay? With recovery and capacity balance being the foundation. And like any hierarchy, we start with a foundation. The base is recovery, you guys. And the other lesson we talked about capacity. If you want to increase capacity, we need to improve recovery. That's why it's recovery and capacity balance. Again, if you're an athlete, we like to skip ahead. We like to skip this part. Often it stems from we feel guilty resting, we've never been taught how, or we don't know its benefit, where adaptation actually happens when you rest. Rest is the least sexy thing, and it's also the most confronting, right? But it's going to be the most important. At the base, we're going to ask questions like, how much are you working? How well are you recovering? Is your body handling the demands of life, stress, and training in a way that produces progress? Because before we even talk about anything else, mobility, strength, technique, the skill that you want to do, the sport, or fixing something, we have to address the factors outside of the gym that are what is going to determine whether your body is going to be in build mode or breakdown mode. Okay. So we're looking at sleep quality and quantity, nutrition quality and quantity, nervous system regulation. I know we're going to talk about nervous system here, stress response, and your current mental state. This changes all of the time. That's why it's not a one size fits all. It's why it's nuanced, because you're a human and every day is going to look different for you. And I'm going to make it crystal clear. Without appropriate sleep, habits, nutrition, and attitudes and stress responses, you end up somewhere between a hamster wheel and a grueling uphill battle. No one loves that. You can have the perfect training program and still feel like trash if your foundation is unstable. It's why the perfect program doesn't exist. It's not just being optimal inside of the gym, it's being optimal outside of the gym too. Right? So now, yes, these factors can be the hardest thing that a person ever does because it's a lifestyle, it's patterns, it's habits. The good news is, though, rest and all of these things are directly under your influence. Congratulations, we don't have to live in victim mindset anymore. You are the controller of your life. When you choose responsibility here, the changes in how you move and feel will be big. Okay. Stress plus recovery equals adaptation. Stress isn't good or bad, it just is. It's up to you to choose the stressors that you want to expose you to or yourself to so that your body adapts in the direction that you want. Too much stress without recovery will lead to pain, injury, plateaus, low energy, all of the things that we don't love. And not enough stress with too much rest, the opposite side of that, will lead to the same thing. Little progress, more frustration. The most important takeaway from the foundation is from the start and throughout the journey, we determine the appropriate amount of stress and recovery required to make progress intentionally. Okay. Like improving your hip range of motion should not be the priority if you've been training 7 days a week for 2 years straight. If you don't catch a problem, then it's probably the problem. This could be you. The training volume might not be the actual problem. Same thing. Your low back pain in a squat might not be because of your low back. It might be because you're sleeping 5 hours a night and you barely move outside of the gym. Fixing the environment first because capacity depends on it, and then we build. Okay, so that's recovery and capacity balance. Then we go up. Flexibility and movement. Once the foundation is addressed, we move to movement. This is what we did in your movement assessment. If you haven't already, please let me know, but we should have already done that because your program is built off of your movement assessment. So once the foundation is there, we go into a movement assessment, and together we found out your flexibility and your mobility. Flexibility first because it's a passive range of motion, meaning that the range of motion with gravity, flexibility is range of motion with gravity or an external force. It's the potential for a joint to move. An easy example is like, if you're watching this, is pushing a finger back. That's passive. That's flexibility, right? We like to say that strength is gained in the range it's trained. So if you don't have flexibility to get into a position, you can't train there and you won't be strong there. But flexibility is also often a glorified pursuit. I need to be more flexible, right? You don't need to be arbitrarily flexible for the rest of your life. You need enough flexibility for your life and your goals. That's nuanced. Sometimes the best move is not more range, it's honoring what your structure allows. If someone has arthritis in their hip and joint doesn't move well, the simplest solution might not be to squat deeper. Their bony anatomy, or the solution might not be to squat deeper than their anatomy will allow or tolerate. On the flip side, we see people who have full flexibility and keep stretching and mobilizing because they think that's the fix. How many times have you spent hours or days or weeks trying to stretch to get looser because you feel tight and you need to work on flexibility, but your pain doesn't go away? The joint already has range when you're flexible. Mobility drills aren't addressing the problem. Now you're just wasting time and maybe making it worse. When we assess flexibility, we're asking, do you have the potential to get into the position you need? And then mobility, which is next, is the active range of motion. If flexibility is passive range, mobility is your ability to access that range with your own strength and control, right? Flexibility is end range. Mobility is control in that end range. So my finger is the flexible, my finger is this flexible. It is this mobile. Mobility rarely exceeds flexibility. The question we're asking instead is, how much of your flexibility can you actively control? If you lack mobility, you can't access and control the range you have, especially under load. That's where it gets risky, okay? If you wanted to go squat and we check your hip flexibility and we see that you can bring your knee towards your chest so that your thigh comfortably touches your rib cage, great. If you can, you have enough flexibility in your hips to squat. But that doesn't mean that you can squat effectively. I've seen people with enough flexibility who can't actually get out of the bottom range of a squat. Why? This is because they don't have mobility to access that range actively. You can get there, but you can't get out of there. Getting out of there is the strength in your end range, right? We're not just going to band it up, lacrosse ball it, stretch it, and hope. If it's an active problem, a passive solution won't fix it. On the other hand, if someone's joint doesn't have the potential for deeper range, strengthening the limited range won't magically create more either. We need the right tool for the right problem, and identifying the right problem is the whole point. Next comes strength balance. Once movement is addressed, we move to strength balance. Most people know their 1 rep max. Great. Maybe you did at one point, maybe you don't anymore, who cares? But often it's like we use that as like an end parameter guideline of what strength is. But we need more detail than that. So instead, looking at questions like left versus right strength, push versus pull, squat pattern versus hinge pattern, front of joint versus back, strength versus stamina. We want to know how well your joints absorb force, transmit force, and produce force in all directions. Your greatest opportunity for improving function is usually hiding in imbalance. When we collect measurable data here, we get another layer of clarity. Above strength balance at the peak is skill and motor control. This is the top. This is where we put it all together. This is probably why you're here. This is you are in pain, but you want a mountain bike. This is you have an injury, but you want to run an ultra marathon. This is you have problems postpartum, but you have kids that you look after. Complex movement with competency, quality, form, and technique is skill and motor control. So the warning is this: jumping straight to skill and motor control first can be a mistake. It's often what most people do. I live in the mountains. I see it all of the time. People live here, they're super active. They're doing the thing. They're skiing, they're mountain biking, they're trail running. They're doing all of these things and focusing on the skill, but they don't understand flexibility, mobility, recovery, strength balance, breath work, all of these things, right? And so when we're running and all of a sudden we have knee pain, it's like I have bad knees, right? Or I'm overtraining, I have bad knees. And it's like, well, you might not actually be overtraining at all, but you're not training optimal for what your anatomy is showing you, right? Sometimes people look like a baby giraffe learning to walk, not because they're uncoachable. I just use that analogy, but it's because you're missing the piece underneath. My dogs are barking, bear with me. I'm also human and have capacity, and my dogs are one of them. Hopefully you get the analogy here. So if you don't have structure underneath, you're going to look a little bit wobbly, right? If you have range, strength, capacity, stamina, recovery, skills improve faster. It makes sense. If you don't, skills stay messy. It's also why I've had clients where we took a season without doing as much focus on endurance on their bike. We strength trained based on what their body was saying. Then they get back on their bike and all of a sudden they're a better technical climber. We used skills outside of, or we used technique outside of the skill to improve the actual skill, right? Skills require reps, exposure, time. And we're moving from unconscious incompetence, which is, I don't know what I don't know, to conscious competence. I can do it when I focus, to the end goal, which is unconscious competence. I can do it without thinking. As you can imagine, this takes time, but it pays off with a better body and less mental energy required to move well. Remember, when we go through this process, your capacity increases. Capacity increases because you have less mental energy bandwidth that you need to give to do the thing. It becomes unconscious competence. Okay. Bottom line, the hierarchy gives us our low-hanging fruit. And that's why we started with a movement assessment and looked at things like recovery, stress, sleep, diet. And it helps us create a functional diagnosis. Your movement assessment is your functional diagnosis. No amount of passive therapy will solve a strength balance issue, right? Like if you have a strength balance issue, getting a massage might give you temporary relief, but it's not going to solve the problem. No amount of thinking about technique will fix a flexibility issue. No amount of stretching will solve a painful joint that already has full range of motion. This is why stretching does not work for most people. And no amount of strength work will help poor balance between stress and recovery. I don't care how much you're lifting in the gym if you're not sleeping and recovering well. We need the correct solution for the correct problem. This is why random programs equal random results. This is a very specific program. This hierarchy is our constant reference point. We will come back to it again and again and stay clear, confident, and effective with it so that we can continue to build real progress without guessing. We never guess here, okay? So the first few lessons that you learned inside of Built Through Movement are load versus capacity, the pain rules and how to navigate that, and hierarchy of needs. These are your framework lessons. The lessons to come in the future will not be as long as these and as in depth, but when you get these 3 lessons down and you just know them, the rest of your life is going to improve and everything that we build upon it is going to get better. So if you have questions on this, please let me know. It's going to be the focus for the next week, maybe 2 weeks. And, there are going to be continued education and reflection prompts on it. So I encourage you to utilize those. Again, I can only meet you as far as you meet me. So let me know what's going on. Tell me what you're experiencing. Any aha moments from the lesson. I want to know this is where we improve. Let me know in the comments. and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.